Get the latest updates and breaking news across the region by following KUAM CNMI on Instagram. Regional correspondent Tomas Maglonia brings what you need to know from the Northern Marianas at the palm of your hand. Full stories, daily updates, and snapshots of the beauty across the Marianas. Follow KUAM CNMI now.
All right, thank you all for joining us. My name is Tomas Maglonia, and we are live here at the Governor's Office on Saipan, where we are moments away from hearing from the first press conference with regards to the fiscal affairs of the Commonwealth. If you've been following our reporting, you know that all indications point to the fact that we are in deficit spending. How we got there, the details of that expected to be revealed today in the first press conference by Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor Apatang. In the meantime, we did have some news out of the Senate. We know that the House Speaker and the Senate President, Edith De Leon Guerrero, and House Speaker Emin Villagomez just met with the governor in his conference room, which we are standing outside of. And we did get this communication between the Senate and the governor. I will just go ahead and read it in full while we're waiting. The Senate President, Edith De Leon Guerrero, writing to Governor Palacios today. On behalf of the Senate leadership, I am informing your office that the Senate formed a fiscal team working to review and assess the financial status of the CNMI government. The assessment will focus on Arpa fund balance left by the past administration and whether or not the FY 2023 budget requires any amendments. The fiscal team is composed of Senator Donna Maglonia, Senator Karina Magofnia, Senator Carl King Neighbors, and Senate Fiscal Analyst Mr. David Demapan. Senate President continues to write as leaders of the 23rd CNMI legislature. I trust that you share the same concerns regarding the current CNMI government's financial status. In order for the fiscal team to perform its work, it is necessary that the team has access to any information pertaining to financial information. Your support and cooperation in the foregoing goal of the Senate fiscal team are needed. If you have any concerns, please feel at liberty to communicate with my office. So obviously the Senate and House, the legislature, now in motion discussing the fiscal affairs in front of the public. We're expected to hear more from the legislature tomorrow. We heard from House Speaker Emin Villagomez just moments ago as he was exiting the conference room that the Ways and Means Chair in the House, Ralph Umel, is going to represent the House side in that working group that the Senate President was talking about, or his designee, or several other members, whoever Representative Umel chooses. But it does appear now that the Senate is going to move forward on its end to be proactive and address the deficit and whatever other financial issues that we will learn about in the press conference. So this is the first press conference that we're having since the election of Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor Apatang. Of course, also many people wondering who his cabinet appointees are. There has been little information coming out of the governor's office with regards to that process. We know early on he said that there would be an application process for those positions. We're also hearing there hasn't been a selection of a chief of staff just yet. So a lot of you commenting with your questions on our stories in the past few days, and we're just standing outside of the governor's conference room waiting to be let in so that we can get the answers that you need to know. So thanks for tuning in, and for now we'll go ahead and show you this quick commercial.
Get the latest updates and breaking news across the region by following KUAM CNMI on Instagram. Regional correspondent Tomas Maglonia brings what you need to know from the Northern Marianas at the palm of your hand. Full stories, daily updates, and snapshots of the beauty across the Marianas. Follow KUAM CNMI now.
It's a tradition that began almost 70 years ago. A trusted legacy, a voice, an advocate, a resource for news you need to know.
Through the years, the headlines have changed, as many of those who have graced the screens sat behind and in front of the cameras and come into your homes every night.
But our commitment to keeping you informed, engaged, and to represent the diverse voices in our community has never wavered.
We are your news leader on every platform and every device. We've grown with the community to reflect the changing times.
We are KUAM News, the voice of the Marianas.
Get the latest updates and breaking news across the region by following KUAM CNMI on Instagram. Regional correspondent Tomas Maglonia brings what you need to know from the Northern Marianas at the palm of your hand. Full stories, daily updates, and snapshots of the beauty across the Marianas. Follow KUAM CNMI now.
But I'll tell you, when I was doing labor, I did not get much funding from the local government.
Damn.
A lot of the program goes is
So many cameras.
I take down 10%. For every funding stream that I have in every federal and then that's the picture that I'm trying to paint.
Let me get up and shake your hand.
Hi, Governor.
Okay, how are you?
You have on your hands. You don't necessarily have to have the local. Seriously. Talk to me.
Hey, Camping. Nice to see you. Where you been? Not really.
We need to analyze that as a state government. so that you know exactly when you're doing your budget deliberation that 50 million of administrative cost allowability, you don't have to take $50 million from your local funds. Simple, right? All right, Tracy, I look forward to your report. Save us. I know, right? That's indirect cost, that's different. That's different from local admin.
I'll press it for you. When you're ready to talk, let me know. I'll press it for you.
One more time. Hi, Sally. Why is everybody quiet? You ready? You have the floor? Oh, wait. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining Lieutenant Governor and I this afternoon. I've also invited members of the legislature, the House and the Senate to join us so that they can participate in this press conference. Again, thank you to the press. We call this press conference because I know we made a commitment to be transparent to the public, and the press is a medium and a public medium and a platform for us to get information. So we were going to have this press conference I think late last week. We postponed it, rescheduled it for today because we needed to do more work. As some of you know, we've finally got our transition reports, and we will be making the complete report available to every one of you. We will be providing digital copies of the report to all of you, so you can take a look at it, and we will be treating everybody equally. Having said all that, let me start by saying that really nothing has changed since the first revelation of the dire financial strait that the Commonwealth government is in today. Nothing has changed from last week. We are trying our very best. We've put together a team from the Department of Finance, OMB, and other the legislatures also are involved to validate the points that were raised in the transition team's report, especially the financials. So the numbers are kind of a moving target right now. But let me be clear. Let us be clear about this. We're still in dire strait. That number is not going to change significantly to a point where we can say that we can save jobs or programs. And so we asked Vicky Villagomez, who is the acting OMB director, we reappointed her, special assistant for OMB, and Tracy, who's the acting finance secretary, to join us, as well as, again, the speaker and the president of the speaker of the House and the president of the Senate, and members of the legislatures to join us this afternoon. Having said all that, you know, we are still in dire strait, and we will continue to look at, one, the level of deficit that we have. I have not seen in all my years the level of misappropriation, misuse, and abuse of public funds in the history of the Commonwealth. And unfortunate that we are in this situation when only 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, we were in a much better position because the federal government had assisted us, just like the rest of states and territories, to help us with the pandemic situation. Like I said, we've been in the office. This is our 10th day in the office, and Dave and I are continuing to, and our team are continuing to work very hard to look at the expenditure and look at the balances of our resources that we have to work with, and go from there. And we're not only just looking at the expenditures, but looking at cost-cutting measures that are going to be necessary under the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And also, we're also looking at, you know, different resources that we have, whether it's local resources and maybe migrating some programs, resources to the general fund to continue to provide the public service that is expected of this government. The Lieutenant Governor will also have a few words, and then we will open up the floor with questions and answers, and Vicky and Tracy and others would be more than happy to chime in to answer some of the questions. But there is no question of the dire situation that we're in. And I don't want to create chaos in the community, but we will work very, very hard and tirelessly to get us out of this situation, to keep the government running. There are, as you all know, mandates, court mandates, which is the settlement fund agreement, and a constitutional mandate for the public school systems. And absolutely, we need to pay attention, continue to pay attention to public health system. But cost-cutting measures would embrace and potentially include everything. We're putting everything on the table. With that, let me turn it over to the Lieutenant Governor to say a few words.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Of course, we invited our members of the legislature here to be with us, and to you, the media. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I know you've been waiting for this press conference for almost a whole week. You guys been up here and out checking when is the press conference, so this is it today. You know, we just ask that whatever you have here is the correct information, so please don't print something that is not correct. So let's put out what we put out to you guys, so the people will not be all jumping up and down out there and saying that we're lying on something. Let's just work together. But we've been working on this issues for days, sitting here in the conference room. Sometimes we don't even have lunch, trying to put these things so we can validate everything. And again, this is not a final. We're still continuing to look into our finances in the government. So until we come up with the actual figures and all that, we're still working in the budget and finance and all our team, the legislature, so we'll be informing you as to what's going on. So again, thank you, and if you have any question, you just go for it.
Governor Palacios, first, could we just start with what are your detailed plans to work with the legislature? We're aware of communication between the House and Senate with you to work on the budget to address the economic issues. And second part to that question is, are you working with OPA, the Attorney General, and other federal partners in this process as you reveal more about the fiscal affairs?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. So we formed, first of all, we formed a team, a core working group from the administration and the legislature. The Speaker of the House, the Senate President have most likely appointed their respective chair from Ways and Means and Fiscal Affairs to the working group. We also have asked several members of the private sector, accountants and business people, to give us assistance in coming up with a plan. And there's no question that we will work immediately to revise the budget. That's a given. There's no way around that. We will be working with the legislature to revise the 2023 budget to reflect the balanced resource that we have going forward. And we also have reached out to OPA. I've had a meeting with OPA this morning, submitted the transition reports for them to take a look at it, validate those reports, and if necessary, make the recommendations, whether to the legislature or to the Attorney General or to myself. I've also submitted the report to the Attorney General's office. As far as the federal partners, we are working. We will continue to work with our federal partners to see how they can help, whether it's through a forensic audit of the Arpa funds, but you know, we haven't had any official conversation per se to this date. We will be in a very, very, very near future, in a couple of days maybe. Some folks have actually reached out unofficially to see what they can do to help. And we're going to be sitting down with all our departments to begin to figure out how to source the shortfalls, if you may.
All right, and just my second question before passing it on, I wanted to address it to you, but also to Ms. Tracy and Ms. Vicky. One of the finance team transition documents indicated that the former secretary turned off the budget control system, a budget control capability in the MUNIS system, which allowed for, in what the transition report describes as over expenditures. And so I wanted to get your comment on that, but also your comment as a former member of that administration. Did you not see this happening in plain view in front of you? Were you prevented from blowing the whistle, so to speak, if you had access to these documents in the first place? How could you not have seen this coming?
Thank you, Tomas, for that question. Before I answer your question, I just wanted to recognize everybody that's here with us today, our honorable members of the legislature, our media partners. and anyone tuning in this afternoon. We are happy to have you guys here with us and to join us in this journey of figuring out a way forward. So before I get to Tomas's answer, I wanted to cover two things, which is one, the Department of Finance transition report, which your question relates to, and the governor's fiscal response team that we have created to address those findings in the report. So some highlights from the transition report: deficit spending mostly due to disaster and pandemic related expenditures and government operations. It also highlighted an Arpa fund deficit of 86 million, which included expenditures and obligations and general fund payments. Then it also talked about our first quarter collections for fiscal year 2023 as being 11% above projections. And then it also highlighted other challenges within the Department of Finance, which Tomas mentioned, the budgetary controls being turned off in our new financial system newness. So because of this report, the governor had created our fiscal response team. It's a working group that consists of the Department of Finance, Office of Management and Budget, the Public Assistance Office, Homeland Security, and we are also looking to add additional members as needed, which also includes analysts from the legislature, because we are working together to find a way forward. The goal of this group is really to look at the findings in the report, the recommendations that affect budgetary resources, our cash availability, especially to pay salaries and to support government operations. So in our initial meetings, we did identify a two-way approach. And so that looks like, number one, conduct an Arpa reconciliation of expenditures. We need time to collect and validate the data that was used to calculate this $86 million deficit. And so our staff are working expeditiously to collect all that information and make sure that we organize that information in a way that is understandable of the uses of ARPA funds. We are meeting, this working group is meeting weekly to share updates, to validate those numbers. And once those reports are confirmed for media release, we will share them with you. So the second part of our approach is really to also identify disaster-related expenditures ready for reimbursement in partnership with the Public Assistance Office. The drawdowns of these reimbursements will really assist us in our cash situation. And so if you had questions around what does this timeline look like, we have reprioritized all staffing and resources to these top two goals, which is the reconciliation and the reimbursements. We've already begun to make daily progress, and we are moving forward in a swift manner. This is our highest priority. And so what are the next steps? The outcome of our working group, this fiscal response team, that will eventually lead to, like what Governor mentioned, 2023 budget revision. And so what that is going to look like, I'll yield to Ms. Vicky Villagomez of OMB to walk you through that process. What does the budget revision look like? And so you asked, your question was about budgetary controls. I'd just like to highlight that the Department of Finance is still ongoing the implementation of this new system. And so one of the things that we uncovered was the budgetary controls were supposed to be turned off for essential expenditures, because when you transition from an old system to a new system, government operations don't stop. And so in order for us to continue providing essential services, we can't have the system stop us from putting fuel into ambulances or paying our police officers and things like that. So the budgetary controls that were turned off had a purpose. However, everything was turned off. And so that was the highlight of the issue in the transition report. Thomas, you also alluded that I was part of the former administration as the Director of Revenue and Taxation. I was a civil service employee. just like all the other employees of the Department of Finance. And so we serve the entire public.
And so, just to clarify, because to correct that question is, did you see any indication of the downfall we're seeing now, of the fallout we're seeing now? Could you have seen this coming, or was it hidden from you in both of your positions?
I wouldn't say hidden from me. It's just it wasn't made available to us. Only certain people, I would say, were aware of the true nature of our fiscal condition. Each director has their own divisions and their own operations as their sole responsibility. So this transition report and the findings are really coming out of the Secretary's office. And so that's where we're starting. And that's how we're going to move forward, is to really start with the Secretary's office and all of the decisions and authorizations that were made at that level.
And Ms. Villagomez, just your comment on, if there was any indication to you that this was a big issue while you were in office then?
Thank you, Tomas, for that question. From the budget perspective, the working group, we use the determination of what was remaining of Arpa, and therefore we will proceed with our revised budget. At that point, we will identify the cost containment measures that we will implement, and then wait for the Department of Finance to report to the governor of any revised projections on the budget. But going back to where you mentioned when I was around, which was the beginning of Arpa, there were times where our office would be informed of allotments with respect to Arpa allocations pursuant to the plan, and whenever there are any deviations, I would immediately call the Department of Finance, the Office of the Secretary, to remind them that there are terms and conditions of Arpa that we must follow.
What was the response?
The response was, there was no response at all.
Mr. Governor, you said that you were going to be working with the legislature to revise the budget to reflect our available resources. Do you have an estimated time? Have you set a time for all your department heads and your folks to establish that? And in the meantime, how will you direct folks in the different government agencies to proceed with an unsure budget?
Well, the first question, we have discussed that I believe last Friday. Yeah, we need to revise the budget. There's no if, when, but, or how. We're working very hard with the team to give us a perspective of where the budget, the revision will go. In terms of the timeline, we will give ourselves as much. We will work very hard. I cannot give you a timeline, a hard date on that. The team just started working together. Finally, the legislature are on board. So we want to work very hard to see where and how and when the budget. Well, obviously the revisions will come before we submit the 2024 budget, which is on May. But we will work very hard, like the acting Secretary of Finance said. This is going to be priority. This is priority on revenue. I mean, the resources that we have and potential revenues, and then how do we move forward with a new expenditure plan. That's going to be a big challenge, but I think that put together a team that's going to work expeditiously to get that done.
Mr. Governor, we had a question that came in from one of our viewers from Tinian. asked how this might affect local Medicaid, CNMI, Nutrition Assistant Program, and the LEHAM.
Those are our real priorities as far as we're concerned. But I don't want to overcommit and say that it's not gonna be impacted. Like I said, indicated, everything's gonna be on the table. We're gonna have everything, we're gonna have cost-cutting measures. We're also gonna set up priorities of public services, critical public services, and Medicaid, LEHAB, and all those other programs. I don't wanna say that they're not gonna be impacted, but we will try to minimize as much as possible the impact of the new revised budget.
Thank you.
Governor, one of the recommendations of the transition team regarding finance is to discontinue the payment of additional 25% pension. What's your take on that recommendation?
Like I said, you know, everything's gonna be on the table. I gave instruction to the transition team to take a look at it and come back with recommendations. What they found is the figures that they have found and the misappropriation of public funds is unprecedented. And the level of abuse is unprecedented. And to continue spending at the level that we were spending the first quarter of this fiscal year and back, it's just not sustainable. Now, so the recommendation, that's part of the recommendation. That's one of the recommendations. That's one of the many recommendations. But that is going to be something that is going to be at the end of the list. Okay? That's not going to be the top priority that we're going to cut. To the extent that we can retain that part of our pensions, to the pension, to our retirees, we will retain that. And we will work very, very hard to make sure, with the legislative commitment and everybody's commitment, we will try to protect that as much as possible. But I don't want to say that we're going to take that off the table, because at this point, we are in such dire situation that nothing should be taken off the table other than the court mandate, which is the 75% retirement. That's a court mandate, and the constitutional mandate, which is the PSS mandate. Did I answer your question? Okay, thanks. We just want to assure the retirees that that is not really in our high priority of cuts that we're going to make.
Mr. Governor, just to get you again about it, you guys been talking about the Bruce program and the likelihood or possibility of the recoupment of the funds?
We've talked to the Attorney General already about that, and he is certainly looking at it. And so I don't want to go beyond that. The legislature has done a tremendous job with a lot of the information that came up, and it basically exposed a program that could have worked, but it didn't. It worked completely the opposite way because of the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability system that was built into the program. So, and I don't want to misspeak, but the Attorney General is looking into it. I can assure you that he is looking into it. I've talked to him about it, and as the 22nd legislature was coming to a close, he was actually very, very keen on looking into it, and he will be looking into it. And if, you know, if necessary, recoup some of those funds. But, you know, that was the tip of the iceberg. 17 million of $500 million is really just a small fraction of it. And we're gonna look at everything, and even you know, I've also talked about possibly looking at unnecessary contracts that are still out there. We're gonna be assessing and evaluating. We're doing that already. Taking a look at some of these big contracts that were out there.
Gov, are you able to share what bank accounts are the government's, what banks are in the, hold the government's money, and how much is left in each account?
No, I don't. I can't see that. There's only 3 banks that we know of. Bank of Guam, First Hawaiian Bank, and Bank of Hawaii. I don't have that. The balance, Secretary of Finance does probably have access to that. Yeah, those are the 3 banks.
All right, and speaking of acting capacities, can you just comment on the process of which you're putting your cabinet together? Of course, these people you're going to entrust will be executing your vision in terms of this budgetary crisis. So what is the process right now? Where are we at with regards to your cabinet?
Where we're at right now? I wish I could tell you that everything is ready to go, and the Senate is ready to do hearings, but with this situation that we're in, I think that kind of took the second priority at this point in time, because I want to make sure that this government continues to function and provide the public service that it's expected to provide, but it's in the process. We're gonna get there. Hopefully, a bunch of appointments, permanent appointments to positions for the cabinet members will start coming out by next week.
And have you chosen your chief of staff, and if not, why?
No, I haven't. Two reasons. Top reasons: I don't have the money right now. Second reason is that, again, this is more important than having a chief of staff. I hope I'm not.
That's your answer.
Hey, yes, PM.
Hi. So can I just go back to the fiscal response team? I understand that one of the two-way approach is to look at the reimbursements, right? And in the financial, or the Department of Finance transition report, it says 48.7 million. For Homeland, they mentioned 126, I believe. And I know the numbers are still a moving figure, but do you have at least like, a figure in your head right now with reimbursements for the disaster funding related expenditures?
Thank you for that question, Sally. Like we said, our fiscal response team has just come together just last week, and so we are designing our approach and how we're going to collect all that information. So the preliminary numbers provided in the transition report is our basis, and we're going to start from there. And we are going to start with those disaster-related expenditures that can immediately be drawn down because that will be cash available to the CNMI. As far as having a number, I don't have. We are relying again on the transition numbers as a basis, a place to start. And we will be partnering with the Public Assistance Office and Homeland Security to focus on those expenditures that have already been made that can be drawn down. And that's all I can tell you for today. Yeah.
All right, so and again, in the transition report, it says the bi-weekly payroll for all employees is 4.7 million. How much longer will it take, until we really run out of money?
That is the question our fiscal response team is trying to answer. So before we can have an answer, we need to collect all the information and the data as to what funds are available, and then from there we can do a projection, which is why we have OMB on the team to make sure that we have as accurate as possible projections so we can have a balanced budget.
And just for clarification, so the numbers in this transition report for the Department of Finance, right? I believe it's $86 million in Arpa deficit. Is that still unsure? Can that change? And also for the general fund deficit of $37.8 million.
So I wanted to just reiterate that the $86 million deficit is a preliminary number coming from the transition team. And so the fiscal response team is going to validate and verify that information. We are collecting all data that went into that calculation to verify the true numbers. So that is our immediate goal. That is our highest priority. As far as the $37 million deficit, that's from FY 2022. That was in the Department of Finance annual report. Yeah, so those are two separate things. Yeah.
Sally, let me just make a comment on the numbers. I sincerely hope that the numbers will come down from the monstrosity of $86 million. And we're hoping, and we keep going back to the same numbers and looking at it from different angle, and I've also asked the OPA's office, the Office of Public Auditor, to validate those numbers, and even some of our private financial firms, public auditors, auditors to help us validate some of these numbers and take a look at it. But it's not going to change the situation. We're still going to be in dire straits, and yeah, that's where we're at. We hope that it's going to go on, but Gary?
Is there any hope that there's a big pile of money out there that hasn't been reimbursed?
We're still looking. We're gonna keep looking. But I have a meeting that I scheduled with the PA office, and the COVID task force folks to really find out what happened from their standpoint, and then we will have them join the team to really help hash up the real numbers and what it is and what are the challenges from the reimbursement point of view. I know that initially when I was involved in when everything was hunky-dory with me and the governor, and I sit in sometimes in these meetings, I knew back then when we first started the COVID expenditures, at that time, maybe 6 months in, and there was a lot of things that we needed to purchase, and even rent out the hotels, 2 hotels. We were already at maybe $65 to $70 million of expenditures, and we have yet at the time to get reimbursed, and I pushed hard, and so for the public assistance or the GAR to get us reimbursed. But obviously, And that's another thing that we need to take a look at, is how much did the COVID respond costs, and how much has been reimbursed by FEMA for those costs. Because I know that we migrated some of our own funds, whether it's from the Commonwealth, the community disaster loan. I know we use some of that. I heard that we use some of that, and some of our own CARES Act that was we received, and as well as local funds. We need to work harder.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Are we looking at raising taxes or fees to cover up the shortfall?
You know, it's gonna be a really hard sell, to tell you the truth, for me and the lieutenant governor and the legislature to go out and impose an additional tax in the wake of what, and I don't say this freely, but I believe it's a misappropriation of public funds, and I don't want to go out and raise taxes again and impose the penalty on the businesses and the people of the Commonwealth because of misappropriation, misdeeds by government officials.
But are we looking at any short-term and long-term ideas to raise funds?
Yes. We're working very hard to identify those, and even we've been talking to our federal partners to see what they can do to help come up with possibilities. Like I said, you know, and I don't take this lightly. I don't say this with any animosity or pointing fingers at anything, but the situation that we're in, okay, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, really. I'm embarrassed to go back to the federal government and request for help, knowing full well that we were given close to $600 million, you know, and we burned it, for lack of better words, we burned it in a little over 18 months. So, yeah, we're in dire strait, and we gotta figure out what to do. I'm embarrassed to go and face federal agencies again to ask for help. It's an embarrassment, but, you know, maybe that's what we're gonna do. I'm just, I guess I'm being as blunt, yet as gracious as I can be to answer that question. Thank you.
Mr. Governor, you mentioned that you don't have money to fund a support staff, but I can see that there's other government employees here. So are they on loan maybe or reassigned to help you out?
Yes.
Excuse me, I want to be on the media, but there's a hand delivery for you that has to be served personally to the governor, so, we have Mr. Harry.
And I'll have the.
No, he's just going yeah, he's just gonna, because it's related to other information that's gonna be communicated today.
I thought you were a court,
No, it's like a court officer, he thought it was subpoena, because he needs to personally deliver this to you, it's not.
I don't want to make it look very official here. There's people here, but again, on behalf of the Assistant Secretary, Carmen Cantor, I'd just like to present this in her response to your letter dated 13th Jan. So, as you know, the Assistant Secretary will be here on the 23rd. Just a brief visit here to say her congratulatory to the Honorable Governor and the Lieutenant Governor, just for a day. And then we'll be heading to Guam to participate on the military. That's it. Again, that's her response to you. And in response to, she's inviting you to the IGIA, which is scheduled for next month on February 7th. So we'd appreciate if you can at least come and participate along with the Lieutenant Governor and also to participate on the NGA, National Governors Association.
That's another challenge I gotta do. Looks like I might have to pay my own way.
But we appreciate if you can come and participate and, be very important for the delegates and all the governors to participate in this very special, meeting that we're hosting.
Thank you. You can sit around and join us.
Oh, sure. Sorry to talk to your meetings.
Thank you. Let me just briefly kind of touch on what Mr. Blanco is referring to. I guess this is a response to the letter we sent out. We kind of heard that she was planning but we wanted to personally invite her. So the Lieutenant Governor and I wrote them a letter, Ms. Cantor, who is the Assistant Secretary of Insular Affairs. We personally invited her to Saipan, and we kind of gave her some of the issues that we're facing. And she had assured us that she'll be here to meet with us and to spend a day with us to go over some of the things that are at the forefront of the issues that we're facing today. And we hope that they can help. I know that there are possibilities to repurpose or reset some of the OIA grants, whether it's a TAP grant for technical assistance that we can access to do training or financial audits. That has been a challenge, and that will continue to be a challenge. And as well as, I know that her visit will also be to take a look at the progresses of some of the projects that we are undertaking under the interior funding. So thank you, Harry, for carrying this. I really thought you looked like a court official.
Don't worry.
It's not a check. I was hoping for a check.
I was hoping for a check. I was hoping that this was a $10 million check.
That's actually it's forthcoming. The Compact Impact money will be hand-delivered to you when she visits here on the 23rd. But anyway, I forgot to give you the IGA invitation too.
Oh. Thank you. So there you are. Who was asking the last question? You had the last question.
Governor, I just have a follow-up. It might be hard for some to wrap their head around how millions of dollars of deficit could be spent with no one knowing. So when did you know? Or how could you have not known?
I was taken out of the system. I don't even know how to handle munis because I was never trained. I was never given the opportunity to. In fact, my office was devoid of Arpa funding as a lieutenant governor. Initially, it was my office was allocated $750,000 of Arpa funds, but as things rolled out, I didn't even get to use any of that money. It was just blanked out. I don't have access to any information on munis other than my account. So I was just like one other office that did not have any access to anything other than your account, and sometimes I even had a hard time accessing my own account.
Is it okay to address a question to a legislator?
Sure.
Senate President Dylan Guerrero,
Yes.
as early as a year ago, in 2022, you've been filing OGA requests to the Secretary of Finance for these ARPA funds. So now that you've seen what it actually is, what's your comment on that, and were accurate numbers given to you in response to your OGA request then, based on this finding?
Yes, primarily my OGA was on the nonprofit organizations that were funded under ARPA. So I did get a response from the Secretary of Finance, from his staff, and pretty much I was satisfied with the response on that. But of course, the numbers that we're looking at right now of the overcommitment of the ARPA monies of more than $86 million, and also looking at the local funds of negative 21 or $34 million is very alarming. But what is very comforting this afternoon, I think, in this press conference is that the team that is organized by the governor and the team that is organized by the legislature and also by for both the House and the Senate, it's comforting to know that they're willing to go back in there and review the numbers again and conduct a further analysis of all the expenses, take a look at all the reimbursements that are supposed to be filed with the federal grantors so that we can recover those monies for the local accounts. And also to isolate specific grant monies, for example, the CARES Act, the ARPA Act monies, and any other monies out there under public assistance so that we could clearly distinguish the exact expenses for this particular funding program so that we can truly come down to the real value of how much negative overcommitment of ARPA monies are we looking at and how much of the negative values for the local funds as well. To include the FEMA disaster money of $93 million that provided the assurance for the retirees for the 25%. Mind you that if everybody recalls, before the passage of the FY23 budget, that particular budget was not going to pass without the assurance from the Secretary of Finance to guarantee the retirees' 25% pension, despite the fact that the settlement fund only requires the state government to commit 75%. However, in our Constitution, it speaks the language of to keep the annuitant whole, and that means their retirement benefit must be at 100% and keep it intact. And I'm very happy to hear this afternoon, this press conference with the governor and lieutenant governor, that we are getting the assurances from the administration and a working team of financial. Just this afternoon, I organized the Senate side, and thank you so much, Tracy, the acting Secretary of Finance, for allowing our fiscal analyst to enter the MUNIS system so that he himself can go in there and analyze the numbers as well. Just so that everybody understands, our fiscal analyst from the Senate side has a master's in accounting, and so I am leaning a lot on his intelligence, on his forensic review of the numbers in the MUNIS system. I understand MUNIS is a very robust financial system from a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, Tata Technologies. I don't question the system myself. However, we do have a prior Tata Technologies employee. Her name is Shirley, and I consider Shirley the brain of MUNIS, and I think we're very grateful that Shirley is on board with the governor's team and the finance team so that we could holistically, all of us as team members, go in there and navigate the MUNIS system so that we can clearly identify all the values associated with the negative numbers that we're reading right now. Thank you, Thomas.
What's her last name? What's her last name?
I'm not sure what Shirley's. Davis.
Davis.
Senate President, how would you instruct folks from any of the agencies to be able to expend any money at all without knowing how much is left?
Well, the thing is, for every government entity, for any government unit, obviously, if you're a sitting department head or director, you're given a budget to operate with, which is your spending money. But, having good financial management, obviously you don't want to overspend your budget despite whatever else anybody's telling you to go about doing. Turning off the features of MUNIS and spending like there's no tomorrow is absolutely not acceptable behavior. But going down to the department level, if you're only given $50, would you spend $100 when you're only given $50? You'd be negative 50, right? So that is imprudent management.
I agree with that, Senate President. However, the question I'm curious about, though, right now, if there's an uncertainty with regards to the amount of funds that any of these agencies have based on the need to review the financials and release a new budget that reflects the current resources, it's not a matter of them spending $100 when they only have 50, it's them not even know if they have 50. So is there anything that's being instructed to the current agencies that are out there to say, to restrict their spending beyond or below what they had initially requested?
I think those instructions are gonna come down from the executive branch. Obviously, all of the department units are falling under the executive branch and not the legislative branch of government. So I'm sure that that proper guidance is gonna come down from the governor.
Let me answer that very briefly. We turn off all the override controls. So if you're trying to spend beyond your budget, it's gonna ding you. So you're not gonna be able to do that. I've asked the acting Secretary of Finance to make sure that expenditure priorities, fuel for the police cars, the ambulance and emergency, that she will allow that. I understand that we also have these speed cards that was issued. I've turned that off. I've asked her to shut it down.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, a lot of the operational funds for a lot of these departments are munis. And so there's no more munis, guys. I mean, I wish there's another way for me to say it, to answer that question. There's no more munis. And that's why we're trying to put a high priority on revising the budget so that all the operations of government, to the extent that we can, will be carried by general fund revenues and existing grants programs.
Oh, Governor, do you have a legal counsel that you have named already?
No.
I'm asking, I'm curious that maybe some of the folks from your financial side might be able to know. During the impeachment hearings, there were a number of cards that had the numbers and names blacked out and redacted. I wonder now if now that you are in office, if you will have access to all that information that was not redacted.
I don't know. I haven't asked the Attorney General. Do we have that? I really don't know. Perhaps I can. I don't know. Maybe they look. When we walked into the office, I didn't even have a desk. But that's okay. That's okay. I can function with a folding table. That's the least of my priorities. We were faced with a dire situation. And I don't know what happened to those documents. Are those documents still in existence? Or were they sorted? I don't know. I don't know. But, fact of the matter is that at some point in time, those information will be revealed. Somehow, things like that tend to surface. But at this point in time, this is where we're at. And that's the only thing that we're focused on right now is to continue to do that. The Attorney General has a case in the courts right now, and we'll leave it at that.
Can the legislature ask questions?
Sure.
I
mean, if the press doesn't mind.
Just maybe the press could. But our acting secretary, maybe we kind of shed some light on this, because the concern has been, and it's been brought up about the shutting off of the control, right, for the munis to allow overspending, right? So, and you had mentioned that it would be shut off for essential services, right? For essential services that were rendered or needed, and that's understandable. But the cost of essential services is a fraction, a tithing of what was actually done. And Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and my colleagues here have to pay attention to this, because that's straight up spending not just $500 million, but the initial transition report is saying plus an additional $86 million. So they weren't just shutting off this for essential services. This was for so much more. And this, I don't understand how it couldn't be criminal to spend this much money. There's supposed to be checks and balances. $12 million was invested in munis. We were sold, the legislature, to buy into this munis. And is it munis that failed, or is it the people behind munis, the operators that failed it, in your professional opinion?
So the munis budget controls that were turned off, again, like I mentioned, was part of the implementation process. And from my personal perspective, there was multiple factors that led to the overspending that contributed to that. So it's a host of things that just provided the perfect environment for these kind of overspending to happen. So again, that's why our fiscal response team is really taking a look at the findings of the transition report and already taking some immediate actions to remedy the problems. So, but yes, I agree.
Thank you.
If I could just follow up, what state did the former secretary leave the finance department for you to take over?
It's definitely a big challenge. We are still in the transition period of the new administration. We're all just trying to get ourselves set up and caught up with the daily operations that require our attention in addition to the task at hand. So everybody's here today because that task is significant. Yeah.
Well, and then to follow up on that, great question from Tomas. Representative Probst, speaking of the former Secretary of Finance, now that there has been a sufficient amount of time, possibly from the last time he was in front of the legislature, do you intend to call him back again to answer questions under oath with regards to the processes?
I cannot comment on that because that's not in my power. That would have to be coming from probably the JGO. But I think we've done our part in terms of from speaking with my colleagues earlier today and our JGO chairwoman, and that we have submitted over 4,000 pages of documentation in regards to the investigation oversight that we did. And with that said, it's right now it's up to OPA and the AG and the Inspector General, the feds, to pick up the ball and run with it, and hope to get a touchdown. Mapo.
So I got a question, just to make sure that that constituents understand the numbers, right? So the ARPA money is 481.7 million, right? Okay, and then we also went into debt, 86 point something million, right? And not only that, the government itself, their funding went into like what, 64 point something in debt. Is that correct?
Initially, the $86 billion was what was called a community disaster loan, which is related to the YouTube disaster. Eventually, that became that was forgiven. So it's basically became a grant. So you have 481 million plus $86 million in grant, plus the CARES, I think $35 million in CARES Act. So we're looking at close to 600 million of fluid liquidity, basically, and it's unfathomable how we were able to burn through those funding in such a short period of time.
Yes, and the reason why I'm asking that, because I want to make sure that the people understand that This is close to $1 billion. And we got nothing, zero to show for it. We didn't get the MRI machine that was promised, you know, so we practically got zero to show for on almost $1 billion.
Well, I got something. What I got is I gotta figure out how to keep this government afloat. That's what I got.
Yes,
I gotta
sir.
figure that out, you know, but, yeah, that's the depressing part of it. But if there's no more questions, let us close.
Can I just, sorry,
Yes.
just one last question, sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure if this was already mentioned, but what timeline has been set for the fiscal teams to provide a true value of the state of the CNMI's finances for both the legislature and the ones appointed by the
Thanks for
finance?
that question, Andrea. Like the governor had mentioned earlier, we don't have a hard date. However, we are working very hard to get closer to the next step, which is a revised budget. We are meeting weekly to make progress, even on a daily basis. So as far as a timeline for our team is as soon as possible.
But do you foresee it taking weeks or months, or just like your estimate based on all of the documents that you have to process and just the entire process of it? What is your estimate?
Like I said, we are working swiftly. We are reprioritizing all our resources and personnel to the goal of the fiscal fiscal response team. And so we are making progress every day. And so I can't give you a hard
Let me
date.
answer that. It's not gonna be months. Okay? But I wish I could tell you it's days, so let's just go with weeks. We're gonna have to impose that, at some point in time, we have to come up with a figure, and even if that figure is not necessarily accurate, what is accurate, and I keep pointing this out, is that we have overspent. What that actual figure is, whether it's 86 or 100 or 60, we still gotta go and revise the budget. Okay? And, it's gonna be a challenge because the budget might shift again, you know? But there are mechanisms, the planning and budgeting law statute that allows the executive branch and the legislative branch to adjust its budget without going to another revision, total revision. But this situation is so dire that we need to revise the budget. But to go back to your simple question, I would say weeks. 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks.
Gov, sorry, I just have one last question. So you mentioned that you are looking at cost-cutting measures. Do these include austerity or furloughs?
Yeah, those are on the table. Those are absolutely on the table, as painful as it is for the lieutenant governor and I, and the legislature to implement that. Those are on the table. And we have started with some of the cost-cutting measures. I will not ask governor and lieutenant governor approve any more travel. If I'm gonna go to that invitation to the National Governors Association, I've already alerted my other half that I'm most likely gonna be paying my own way to go even on these official visits. And then, unless it's essential travel, unless it's essential expenditure, I've instructed the Secretary of Finance to make sure that those expenditures that we can cut down on in the executive branch, we can implement immediately without going through the legislative process.
Governor,
Mr.
do you have
Swart?
You have a point person if somebody has a good idea to help with the deficit?
You know my number.
And somebody called in this morning and said, why don't we, people with minor marijuana infraction, one joint, from the days before it was legalized. $33,000 savings right there.
That's not minor. That's already,
Huh?
$33,000 fine?
No, it costs $33,000 a year to keep one prisoner in prison. But if you let him go, then say that 33,000. Tracy likes
That's a good idea, I mean, that's something that, we have to talk to the AG about.
They did it in California.
Let me conclude this by saying that, this journey to economic recovery, it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna require a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of thoughts, a lot of humility. But we will come out of this. I can assure you, we can work hard with the legislature and other members of the executive branch and even the judicial. I will be having a meeting with them, I believe, tomorrow to give them a briefing on this. We're also working with we will be working with our federal partners to see how and what they can offer the Commonwealth this situation, and I can also assure you that we will revisit and reset the financial situation with our FEMA partners and the Public Assistance Office to expedite all these projects that have been sitting for 4.5 years or 5 years from YouTube. There is absolutely no reason for any more delays, and that would help regardless. And so we will do everything. We will be turning every bush there is to turn, every rock, every stone that we have to turn to get the Commonwealth back on track to economic recovery. And again, one never expect to see this kind of a disaster. It's like, I don't even know how to describe this, but it is a disaster. And I don't think there's any FEMA money for this kind of a disaster. So we're gonna have to work it ourselves and figure this out ourselves. Of course, I know that the federal agencies and federal partners and other members of our private sectors are also trying to help and call and extended your hands to extended a helping hand, but this is the effort. This is the 10-day effort. We're on our 10th day, and it hasn't disappeared. I wish it had. I wish I would wake up from this nightmare, but I keep waking up to the same problems every day, and there's no shortcuts to this. It's just a painstaking process, and I ask the members of our community to be patient with us, to be understanding of the situation, and I really hope that with this press conference, we've at least given the general picture of the situation that we're in. This is serious. I wish that it was different. In as much as we want to downplay the seriousness of the predicament that we found ourselves in, it's not going away. Now, there are people that have called, say, what are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna hold those people accountable? Yes. I believe that those people that have misused, misappropriated, and abused public funds should be held accountable. But we will leave that to the Attorney General and recommend that OPA also take a look at it. As this is a federal funding, I would think that federal government will also be interested in looking at how we spend or misspend the funds that were provided to us by American taxpayers. I will give the rest to Lieutenant Governor for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Governor. You know, we'll share the latest information to you today as to our status in our government. We want to assure you that we are continuing. We will continue to do our best to come up with additional figures and hopefully validate what we're giving you guys today. So this thing is a headache. I can't sleep at night. I drink a lot of coffee. But hopefully we can come together and put things on the right direction for our people. We care for our people, and we didn't expect to come in and find a situation like this. We want to continue to rebuild trust in this government, so that's why we're here for. We will try, work hard with our staff, the legislature, to see what we can do for our community, the Commonwealth. We cannot just sit back and do nothing. And that's our commitment. Thank you.
Thank you again for your time this afternoon, and I hope I didn't misspeak